You are listening to episode 94 on the Air Hug Community Podcast. Hello there and welcome or welcome back. If you are new here, this is the Air Hug Community Podcast and I am your host, Judy Arizosa. I am a midlife lady who is someone who loves to share stories from myself and special guests that reflect on just how midlife really goes, not how we think it should go. We talk about the good, the bad, the messy, the ugly, the wonderful, all the emotions. And this is a place where we actually can grow from our experiences. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Hey, let's get started. Are you ready? I have a juicy topic today. I'll tell you, I got to be honest with you. I've been researching this topic for quite a while, and I sat down to record it yesterday, and I just felt like I didn't have enough information on it, believe it or not. And so I kind of went back to the drawing board and did more research. I have looked up studies, numerous studies. I've just done a lot of research, and I want to talk about something that's really ignored largely for midlife women, and yet it is a very big problem that I don't think, in fact, I know that is not really recognized by society and not really recognized well by the medical community. And what we're talking about is the stereotype of eating disorders. So eating disorders or disordered eating, there's a difference between the two. You can have disordered eating without having a full-on eating disorder, but you can have disordered eating. Anyways, eating disorders and disordered eating are largely stereotyped as a disease or an issue or a problem prevalent among adolescent and young adult women. And in fact, midlife women are very much overlooked in disordered eating research. But I was able to find a lot of research that actually did address this situation and talk about it. So I want to start out with some, what I would call somewhat eye-opening facts about midlife women and disordered eating. 73% of midlife women experience weight dissatisfaction and a desire to lose weight. 62% of women over 50 in a large community-based sample reported that eating, weight, and shape occasionally to often negatively affected their life. So I guess they had answers that could have been, I know occasionally and often were two of the answers. I assume some of the other answers were like less than that. But 62% of them fell into the occasional and often category. 11% of women in the U.S. and Australia self-reported disordered eating practices such as binge eating. So you see, this is not really, disordered eating is not unique to young women. And I dare say that it doesn't go away as we age. And it also brings up the whole situation and thoughts about body image. So I think I'm going to go here. I wasn't sure how I wanted to lay this out, but since we just talked about body image, let's talk about what body image is. So we're all thinking about it in the same context. And I'm going to go on the definition according to registered psychologist Carol Frederick. So what is body image? It is 5 things. All right. Number 1, it's how you see yourself in the mirror or in your mind. Mentally, it's what you believe about your appearance. That's number 2. Number 3, emotionally, it's how you feel about your body, your height, your shape, and your weight. Number 4, kinesthetically, I like saying that word. I just wanted to say it again. It's how you sense and control your body as you move. And historically, number 5, it's a life of experiences, your pleasure, pain, praise, criticism. And the thing about body image is it's always evolving, and it's not something, suffering or having issues with it is not something that is unique to adolescent girls and young women. So let's talk about a negative body image. So a negative body image is consistent with a distorted perception of your shape and believing that your body size and shape are a sign of personal failure. It also is associated, a negative body image is associated with preoccupied and being dissatisfied with your appearance. There's shame associated with it, self-consciousness, anxiety, and envy of other people. All right, a positive body image is one in which you have a clear perception of your true shape. You do experience a mixture of emotions and attitudes and actions that let you enjoy how you look and feel. You celebrate and appreciate your natural self. You accept who you are and refuse to obsess over food weight or calories. It's displaying a little bit of confidence. Okay, so why do I bring up body image? Because I'm going to back up here a little bit in my notes, but I decided to give you the background on body image first before we go to where we're going next. Because in my research, I was really amazed to find, and I think a lot of women think they're alone. They don't think that other women, especially women over 50, think that other women think as much as they do about negative body image. But the fact of the matter is that many, many women over the age of 50 suffer from body image issues. In fact, there was a really interesting study done on body image, aging, and identity in women over 50, and it's called the Gabby study, Gender and Body Image Study. And this was a really interesting study. It didn't have the largest sample size. It had over 1,800 women. But what was unique about this study was that the questions were, number 1, anonymous, and number 2, open-ended. So nobody knew when these people were answering who they were, what they were. It did cover things like race and I think age. I know it covered race and age. And I will say right out at the beginning, one of the weaknesses of this study was that you had to actually have access to a computer. So it probably left a lot of people out and did not have a true representation of all socioeconomic classes. So I just want to put that out there. But nonetheless, the findings are really interesting. So first of all, this study asked 5 open-ended questions. So here are the questions. What do you miss most about your younger body? Number 2, what do you appreciate most about your mature body? Number 3, what do you know about appearance, body image, or health that you wish you had known when you were younger? So in other words, if you could send your younger self a message about body image and health, what would that message be? Number 4, what would you like for others to understand about women over 50 and their thoughts, their feelings about their bodies and themselves? What do you want the world to know about women over 50, about how they think about their bodies and themselves? And the AWE question, AWE, so I'm going to take a little tangent here before I get to the 5th question. In my coaching practice, I have read some books, and there's a great book on the coaching habit. I'm not getting the name right, but it's something like that. I'm paraphrasing it. And one of the things that we often ask people, and some of you who have worked with me will know this when we're on a coaching call, I will say, and what else? And then I'll pause and let the person on the other end of the call talk about it. And what else? And that's the acronym is AWE, the AW question. And by the way, that often opens up a lot of doors and a lot of insight into what's going on. But here, their AWE question was, and what else would you like to tell us about your weight, shape, body health, and body health over the age of 50? What do you want the world to know about your feelings on this? And so this ended up being a very complicated study. First of all, I think it's amazing that 92% of the people surveyed actually completed all 5 questions, which seems like a lot, right? And there were independent coders, researchers, they were coders who poured through the data and the answers to these questions, and they came up with 4 primary themes. And just so you know, the background is these 3 people all are professionals in eating disorders. 2 had graduate degrees, 1 had an undergraduate degree. And then when they were done and when they couldn't agree exactly on everything, they brought in a 4th person as an internal audit to help with that and help them come up with these themes and sub-themes. And then once they were done, they brought in an external person to do an external audit/edit to solidify these themes. And so this is where we're going with this. 4 primary themes emerged from these 5 open-ended questions. The themes were, number 1, the physical and psychological experience of aging. Number 2, the injustices and inequities and challenges of aging. Number 3, self-care. And number 4, the outcry for the recognition and a contributory role in society. So let's go back to number 1, the physical and psychological experience of aging. These are some of the things that came up in the answers to the questions. There was a lot of shame versus embracing who you are. And people went both ways on this question. Some were shameful of the way they aged. Others were ready to embrace it and just say, this is me, this is who I am. There were the practicalities, the people who said, aging is not for sissies. You have to work hard at it to do it well. And they were referring to physical activity and eating healthy. And I thought that was very interesting, that some people were just very practical. And then there was the dissatisfaction part of people expressing the changes that their body was going through and how dissatisfied they were with what was happening, but also felt that they couldn't do anything about it. And then there was functionality. And this was the pressure to be thin and attractive was very, very strong. And they felt that it was, as they aged, it didn't really go away, which I think is very, very interesting. Because you think a lot of it is when someone's searching for a mate, you have that pressure to be attractive to the other sex. And I don't mean to take that a wrong way, but purely from a biological point of view, this is how our species continues. And I don't mean it in any derogatory way at all. That's an entire other episode that we could go into, not going there today. And also then there's, how some women changed their priorities from trying to be like the perfect figure to being grateful for the life they have and the health they have and accepting where they were in life. So as you can see, there was a lot of difference in the physical and psychological experience among these women. So number 2, the second theme that emerged was the injustices and the inequities and challenges of aging. So a lot of women expressed societal pressures. They still felt that they had to look and dress a certain way. They needed to be, like, for example, thin and unwrinkled with non-gray hair, but at the same time, they were told to act their age. And this was a theme that came up in several of the answers, which is why it was one of the 4 main themes. The other one was the experience of experiencing ageism. So the real and perceived judgments that women felt were made about them based on their age. And they felt that they deserved more respect. In fact, a lot of women voiced the fact that as men get older, they're automatically more well respected, whereas women are not. It's kind of like they're just done. And it's almost like they're invisible. So we can talk about that more, but that whole feeling of being invisible, I think, drives a lot of things, right? And there's definitely going to be some body image thoughts associated with that, right? So, I mean, if you perceive the world to see you as invisible, how are you going to respond? And if you're already in mid-age and you're listening to this, I'm sure you've got some thoughts going through your head. And I would actually love to hear some comments on this if you would like to make some comments on the website or reach out to me personally with comments. I think it would be very interesting to see what you think about this. The third theme was about self-care, and it was definitely about taking care of your body, and of course that comes down to eating well, which I know is a vague term, and everyone has their own definition of that, and physical activity. And many of them felt that aging healthy is hard work. And a lot of them lamented that not taking care of themselves at a younger age put them in a position that they were in this over 50 age bracket that they regret. So maybe that would be something that they would put back in their message to their younger self. I think that was one of the things that probably got answered that way. So in the information I have here, it doesn't talk about the comments specifically. It just talks about grouping them into these themes. But they also talked about realistic health goals in maintaining their best health possible. So a lot of the answers were very realistic and not idealistic, which I think is very interesting. The fourth theme, which I didn't see coming, and I can actually see it in hindsight as I've got poured through all this information and study after study, but there's an outcry for recognition and a contributory role in society. So, a lot of women have felt that they become irrelevant and invisible, and they feel very unwelcome by many. And I will tell you that I can feel that way, but then I choose not to. I choose to kind of ignore that story in my head. But I definitely, that theme does emerge, I will tell you, in my brain. So I don't know about you, but it's that feeling of, at this point, of being not seen and not heard. And what was interesting was that a fair amount of women took offense to that, but there were some women who actually breathed a sigh of relief and said, that's fine. If I'm going to be not seen and not heard, I'll just live my life in peace. Which to me is a little bit of, I almost see that as a sign of depression and sadness. But anyways, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It's almost like discounting the attractiveness. But the women are like, you know what? We still have a need for recognition and attention, and not just as an object of a body for someone else's pleasure, but for the fact that we contribute to the world in many important ways. In which case, I want to share another couple of statistics that I found very interesting. So, in 1972, 400,000 businesses were owned by women. Today, there are over 13 million. And 62% of female business owners are between the age of 40 and 59 years old. So we are not invisible, and I think again, this survey, this study, covered a lot of different women. Maybe not all of them were professional, maybe, and I don't know what percent of them were. The study didn't control for that. But I think it's very interesting that some people felt that invisible thing. And sometimes I feel like I don't want to stop doing what I do, helping women, because I don't want to become invisible. I want to continue helping women. And I feel like that's what God has called me to do is to help other people. It's not that I want to be seen for doing it. I feel that I need to do it. I would be doing it an injustice if I weren't doing it. Does that make sense? And I that didn't come up in the survey, in the study, but I'm wondering if other people felt that way. So it's interesting. They also talk about a couple of terms. One was the ageless self, which refers to the concept of a continuous self, regardless of age. And I can definitely identify with that. We may not look the same. There's gravity, there's, wrinkles, there's a different hair color, and all those things that have gone on. But on the inside, our brains and thoughts are just as young and powerful as they have ever been. And so that's the concept, having an ageless self. And a lot of older women voiced a sense of injustice in their aging experience. They felt, again, very different from aging as women to the perception of how men aged. But they still felt this internal shift, that we're still young on the inside in spite of our appearance. And I love that. However, there was a lot of women within these themes, the injustices, that talked about the double standard of aging. Once again, how men seem to just get more respect simply by getting older, whereas women did not. And they felt that that was somewhat unjust. So it's pretty interesting, I think. And it definitely is a lot of food for thought. So the discussion here is the physical and psychological aspects of aging are important, in that women in general are dissatisfied with their changes in weight and metabolism. In fact, many of them reported as physical changes occurred, their cognitive feeling about this adapted like it changed their physical appearance. So how they thought about their negative body, what they perceived to be negative body changes, really affected how they went about their life. And this was pretty daunting. And I think this is where it's not very well understood that women over 50, I can't compare it to, there was not a comparative study with body image issues and disordered eating issues compared to younger ages. But what did come about was that body image issues exist in midlife women, not just in young women and adolescent women. And part of the reason for this study that happened to begin with was the fact that these people felt that there wasn't enough known about, are these isolated instances, or is this more how women feel? And I think it's really interesting. I don't know how you and your population or community feel about it, but it's definitely something that needs to be addressed and available. And the medical community needs to know about it so that there can be resources, right, to help these people. So psychologists and healthcare workers and dietitians and nutritionists and all kinds of therapists and trainers need to know that disordered eating is not just something that happens to adolescents and young women only. So I think this was really very important. Do I have answers? No, but I think it's building awareness. And also, I think that it's important to get it out there so women don't feel like they're alone, right? And we can talk about disordered eating. You don't have to have an eating disorder to have disordered eating. And this is an important distinction, although I'm not saying eating disorders don't occur in midlife. I haven't done that research, but it is known that along with body image issues, disordered eating is definitely a thing of major concern to women over 50. Think about obsessive calorie counting or diet jumping or restricting on the weekdays so that you can get what you think you deserve on the weekend in terms of celebrating with eating more than what is good for your body. And even just constantly restricting or having, and we can talk about this later, if you want to have a chat, if you would like me to do a podcast on on intuitive eating versus, different types of dieting lifestyles, I'll be happy to do that. I personally feel, it doesn't matter, I guess, what you think I feel, but I would categorize myself as someone who is actually recovering from disordered eating. Not an eating disorder, but definitely, being very concerned to a very far degree about eating healthy and eating not overeating, but then eating maybe even sometimes under eating so that I could have that relaxation meal, which I of course refuse to call a cheat meal, but in actuality that's what it was. And so I've always said that things like dieting down for a show for me were not hard to do because I knew there was an end point. But what I did find harder to do after those 16 bodybuilding shows was adopting a maintenance type of lifestyle. And number one, understanding that you're not trying to maintain a body that's a show body. You're trying to maintain a reasonably healthy body. And a lot of times I think women can fool themselves with what a reasonably healthy body is. And a body after menopause that's healthy and fit and has a healthy amount of fat on it, so it's a healthy amount of leanness, right, is not going to look the same as a premenopausal body that is healthy. And that's something that a lot of us, and this was talked about in the study, find very hard to accept. You can have a very lean body, not excessively lean where you're seeing striated muscles, but healthy lean. And lo and behold, you will have, if you're postmenopausal, there's a very good chance that if you have a healthy amount of leanness, you're still going to have a little pooch in your abdomen because that's just what our body does at this age. Or let's say you get diet down, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but you get rid of that pooch, then your face is so thin and drawn out that it becomes super saggy. And so you got to kind of pick, right? It's not, you aren't going to look like you did before. And I personally find it easy to live with a little bit more of abdominal belly fat. I enjoy having my face a little bit fuller. It's kind of like I don't have to get fillers. I just have a little bit of fullness in my face. And I've just come to the terms with the fact that a flat abdomen is not a definition, or super lean shoulders where you can see the striations between muscles is not the definition of healthy, and by the same token, you don't want so much abdominal fat that you are a super apple shape. Yeah, we're all probably going to have somewhat of a spare tire, but we have to find that healthy medium. And I don't love body mass index as an indication of leanness. I also don't love body fat percentages, and I'll tell you why about each of them. Body mass index, I'll talk about first, and this is not in my notes, but this is something that I really like to let people know. Body mass index is probably the best thing we have for general population and to talk about leanness, but the problem is if you have a lot of muscle, and I know a lot of women over 50 don't have a lot of muscle, but if you've been weight training a long time and you do have a lot of muscle, that muscle is going to factor into your body mass. And so it's going to make you have a little bit higher body mass index without having a higher body fat percentage, which leads me to body fat percentage. Practically speaking, like stepping on a scale, which I will do, but don't love. Don't want to obsess about it, but don't want to ignore it either. Just have to come to learn to know it's a healthy relationship with your body against gravity. That's all. But going back to body fat percentage, there really is not an accurate way to measure it on an ongoing basis unless you want to spend a lot of money and do like the underwater test or go into, and that's just not practical. That's just not a habit that you're going to want to invest in, because basically you'll go broke doing it. So I have never tested body fat. I'm the odd trainer that doesn't test body fat. I will do body circumference if people ask. And I do think that's a little bit nicer. Just, do your waist measurement, do your thigh measurement, do your hips at the widest point. Unless you always wear the same sports bra, I don't do a bust measurement. But if you're going to commit to always wearing the same sports bra, because wearing different ones is going to make the measurement different, right? We all know they all fit different. Some have padding, some don't. Some have a lot of padding, and therefore it's not it's not consistent. But anyway, so I don't recommend relying on body fat percentage as a measure of leanness. And of course, trying on your clothes is always a great one, right? How do those jeans fit? Are you happy with how they fit? That's all. So, and how is your fitness level? Are you getting winded, or can you do what you need to do? So anyways, I just think this was a really interesting topic. And the more I got into it, the more I realized there's so much more to talk about here that we could get into. And I feel like we have opened up a Pandora's box here on the Air Hug community. We have been trending towards more midlife conversations, and that's okay. If anyone wants to go in a different direction, let me know. But midlife women is my niche. It's what I know. It's who I talk to, and it's who I care about in serving. So if you have some of these issues, I think it's very important to speak to your healthcare professional about it and let them know, and talk to someone who can help you, a professional someone. If you are constantly jumping from diet to diet to diet, and you're always on a diet, that's not normal or healthy. I want you to know that. And it might be something where you'll need to talk to someone about it. So I just want to let you know that. If you want to talk about maintaining healthy nutrition without being obsessive, feel free to book a call with me. I will talk with you. I am a nutrition coach, and a lot has shifted. I feel like the more experience that I have with life, the more I have to share with others. But also the training, precision nutrition and metabolic effect, and now Girls Gone Strong are all certifications that really have supported these beliefs all along. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. And I just want to thank you for listening here on the Air Hug Community Podcast today. Please, if this episode was important to you, and if it made you think of anyone besides yourself, maybe a BFF or a sister or an aunt or your mother, please share this episode with them in the kindest of ways, because you never know, it may actually help them.